What if the same brain that struggles to navigate a normal world is actually wired with clues to help heal it? My next guest is an ASB functional medicine doctor who uses genetic insights to help adults on the spectrum build resilience in the world that wasn't designed for them. And a stand-up comic who turns those same experiences into something we can laugh at, learn from, and maybe even see differently. You're listening to the Neurodivergent Connection. So sit back, relax, and grab your favorite beverage, and let's dive in. See you there, everybody.
I wanna believe in the truth, but only see what I'm shown. Got the freedom to choose, but can't decide on my own. Follow what the group is thinking, bottle up my intuition till it's popping up.
Hello, and welcome back to the Neurodivergent Connection. Today I'm joined with Dr. Sam Shay. Welcome to the show, Dr. Shay.
It's good to see you. Thank you.
So as I always start off with, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I grew up in a household that was very academic, and I didn't um, I didn't know that I was on the spectrum until my late 30s, until I found out that my father was on the spectrum, and through someone pointing it out to me. And growing up, I knew at 6 years old that I wanted to be a doctor. I just didn't realize that I was going to pivot into more natural medicine than Western medicine at the time. My parents they had a really bad divorce when I was 6 years old, and they did things really poorly, like weaponizing their kids against one another, and lots of gaslighting, and also it was just not a really good situation. And at school, I didn't there was a lot of bullying, there was a lot of violence, and I didn't understand going to school. It's like, why are people like lying to me? Why are they saying one thing and then behaving another? And that the kind of the petty cruelties of children. And I just didn't understand. I realized later that I wasn't really born with social software, and I had to build it from first principles from the ground up. And I came home and thoroughly confused and in physical pain, and not getting support from my family. I would watch sitcoms and watch, like, this is in the 80s and 90s. So, in the 90s, the famous ones were like Seinfeld, Simpsons. In the 80s, it was like Cosby Show, Full House. I mean, Full House went into the 90s also. And I tried to study families like an anthropologist by watching sitcoms. And that's how I got really involved with comedy. And right now, my primary mission is to help educate and advocate for people on the spectrum through stand-up comedy. And I've written and produced an entire show that's available for free on YouTube called Neurospicy: Love, Life, and Comedy on the Spectrum. And despite my academic veneer, like I am a professional comic, as not as like my full-time profession. It's against my advocacy and my education to try to bridge the understanding between people on the spectrum and people who aren't. And it's the 60 minutes I wish that I had 30 years ago to share with my family, my teachers, my community, my friends, the gatekeepers like doctors and therapists, and other people that had meaningful power over a child. And the my type of humor is clean, and it's dry, and it's observational, and there's no politics, there's no cursing, there's no gratuitous body fluid jokes. It was designed to bring people on and off the spectrum together. And I cover all sorts of things, everything from like the fraught nature of the nomenclature of how do you quote diagnose or name people on the spectrum, to including like hilarious things around dating, around dealing with parents, around the different sensory sensitivities and so on. Like, I have 3 minutes just on sound sensitivity, and it's that one in particular is really a mystery to people who don't live with sound sensitivity, because it's invisible. Like, there's no blood coming out the ears. There's nothing like it. There's just kind of this invisible. I mean, I actually describe it in my show that high pitched noises. I feel like I like a kidney stone in my skull. I actually say
Mhm.
that, and it's like a kidney stone attack out of nowhere. Like it could be from screeching brakes, clattering silverware, shrill children, and describing just how limiting that is. But people don't understand who don't live with this, just how debilitating it can be. And my style, my intent is that I'm on stage, and I'm not self-immolating on stage like I'm a zoo animal. And I'm also not dunking on the more normative, air quotes, normative population. Again, it's just to really bring people together and to help give words to people
Mhm.
on the spectrum about to share to explain their experience and as a resource for them to point to friends, family, colleagues, gatekeepers, whatever. It's like, look, this is at least this slice over here on the spectrum. Like, you watch this and you'll better understand what's going on. And it also helps for the more normative population to it's like, I had no idea. Like that's literally the feedback I've gotten from people who've watched it, and they're so thankful to actually see it. It was a resource I wish I had growing up. So instead of being upset and bitter and wounded and reeling, I was like, I want to be a part of the solution to the lack of education to the people around me and for myself because I just didn't know back in the 80s and 90s and so on. I wanted to be part of that solution. I thought stand-up comedy would be the best vector to deliver information in a fun and memorable and meaningful way. So that's the comedy side of it, and then the clinical side of it is that I'm a functional medicine practitioner. I decided to instead of going to Western medical school, I was supposed to be a third generation medical doctor in my family, but I pivoted to go to chiropractic school and then got into functional neurology and then got an acupuncture degree, trained under an osteopath, and then got really heavy into functional medicine, training under the Institute for Functional Medicine and the Kalish Institute for Functional Medicine, and then also going very deep into genetics under Fit Genes. And I have been basically full time devoted to natural medicine since I graduated and opened my practice back in 2010, and now I'm 100% virtual. And
Mhm.
what I do with people is that I help what people on the spectrum is I help them increase their resilience and their self agency and their personal efficacy in the world through primarily through functional genetics. So people can get their own personalized genetics analysis to understand what is their relationship to inflammation, free radical damage, liver detox, methylation, cardiovascular system, their food triggers, genetics and eating behaviors, the optimal exercise and recovery. Are they their carb tolerance? Are they more keto, paleo, Mediterranean, or high carb? And the reason I really encourage people on the spectrum to do something in regards to functional testing, especially genetics, is because now they have a framework to understand like what is their optimal form of living, like optimal diet, optimal nutrients they may need and more of, optimal exercise and recovery, etc., as opposed to guessing and hoping and like, oh, I read this article, I listened to this person or whatever, and it's like, well, why not just actually get some data? And I know people on the spectrum, kind of on balance, love data. We love
Mhm.
it, and so the one of the most inarguable things we have from a data perspective is like what are your genes, and the good news is that there's about 140 genes as it relates to health expressions that you can actually do something about. You can't change your genes, but you can change the expression of them so that you're like I'm hyper-inflammatory genetically, so I can do things lifestyle-wise to make me much less inflammatory. I can find out, oh, I'm actually not a Mediterranean style diet, which was what I thought I was supposed to be because that's what everyone said. Turns out I'm a low carb, paleo, borderline keto optimal diet. Turns out I can't actually do caffeine because then I'll get caffeine induced anxiety and depression because that's genetically linked. And that matched my experience. I'd be an anxious, jittery mess when when I have caffeine, no matter how much coconut oil I put in it, to be quote bulletproof. Um, histamines, and I found out like I'm histamine sensitive, so there's other certain foods I should minimize, and on and on and on. So there's that I need to focus on recovery, run my exercise. That I'm intermediate twitch fiber type, so I have, you know, I'm genetically built for specific optimal performances in certain sports and not others, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like a roadmap that I wish I certainly had 30 years ago. I only got my genes tested back in 2016, so we're coming, 10th plus year. And I it was so transformational for me that I I've devoted a huge portion of my professional life to it, to the point where I'm now the lead educator for Fit Genes, both in the Western Hemisphere and internationally. And I if I had known that I had such problems with specific types of foods, and I was optimally designed for specific types of foods, and I had known the things I do now about inflammation, and that how I and lifestyle should have changed accordingly, like my health and my life and my brain and my mood and my sleep would have all been massively improved.
Mhm.
Thankfully, we now have the technology to make it really easy and straightforward. And I feel that a lot of times, if for people on the spectrum, and I'm speaking from personal experience and working with others, that the outside world sometimes doesn't take our health issues seriously, or our low resilience
Mhm.
seriously, or like the air quotes weird, and I put that in air quotes, the weird food issues we have, as just like, oh, it's just they're acting out, or what. Like there's a lack of compassion, and the reality is that there's just a lack of data.
Mhm.
And if you can just have the data and be like, oh, this is hard coded, then there's no ambiguity, and it's something you can point to, as opposed to chalking it up to being, oh, my brain is weird, therefore I have all these other weird things going on, and it can just clarify so much. And we're already struggling with a sensory overwhelm.
Yeah.
uh, we what we don't need is additional confusion and stress around food, nutrients, exercise, and lifestyle.
All right. Now, let's start here. How often do you how often do you people not expect you to say you're an ASB functional medicine doctor and a stand-up comedian in the same sentence?
How often do they not expect me to say that?
Yeah.
Um, well, if they ask me, I usually tell them. So I don't. I mean, if people ask me professionally what I do, I tell them I do functional medicine and functional genetics, and then I advocate and educate for people on the spectrum using stand-up comedy. And
Now, go on.
that's how if people ask me what I do, that's kind of the most pithy way I can describe it. I'm open
Which
to ideas.
which one surprises people more?
The stand-up comedy. I mean, I look like I look, I look like a reformed supervillain. Like I look like a Dr. Part. If I stand there and I'm in my professional garb and whatnot. Like it's they're not surprised. It's a stand-up comedy that they're very surprised about. And partly because when I chat, I'm I can I come off as a bit academic. They don't realize that I have a lot of comedy, and especially I do act outs where I imitate. It imitates. I really, in the stand-up comedy world, it's really interesting. I do act outs in this, like I imitate and impersonate other people, like David Attenborough, The Godfather, um, Sheldon. That's not much of an imitation, but not a big stretch, I should say. And but people don't real and people are very surprised. But really, imitating people is a form of masking. It's just taking masking to its logical conclusion on stage. That I had to learn how to adapt through masking, and then
Mhm.
doing act outs was so easy for me because I just know how to imitate. And I think that's just a part of the whole package of being Aspie.
Now, do you ever enjoy letting them short circuit for a second?
Um, you need to when I tell them and they kind of have that confused like
Yeah.
record scratch head tilt thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do I enjoy it? Only all the time. Just kind of let it sink in, and then if they're still like looking at me like confused, I just quietly, adjust my glasses upward, just to make the point.
Now, if someone meets you for the first time, what's the version of you they think they're getting, and what are they actually getting?
I did. It's kind of. I think it depends on like if my mind is preoccupied with something or not. If my mind is preoccupied and someone sees me, like what they see is usually uh a kind of a more serious toned person, like that's kind of like inside of his internal world. But if I'm more like an extroverted introvert,
Hmm.
and part of that I think is what I was born with, but also part of it is actively trained because being my father was an introverts, and I didn't want to end up like him being terribly socially isolated which was his own fault. And so I've proactively uh, go out of my way to go to social situations, however uncomfortable that I am, because I know what not doing that leads to.
Mhm.
And but if I'm extroverted in that moment, usually the impression they have is like, wow, he's super inquisitive and will ask me lots of, being a clinician, you're trained to just ask questions all day.
No,
And some people are flattered. Some people feel like, is this a deposition? Like, what is happening here? Like,
now let's talk a little bit about neurodivergence in medicine.
yeah.
You're open about being on the spectrum yourself.
Uh-huh.
How did your own neurodivergence shape the way you practice medicine?
Well, in school, I graduated the only summa cum laude in my class, and I graduated with with highest honors and perfect GPA out of college. The graduates and the yeah, graduate school was the summa cum laude, and I was a rock star in academia and just soaking up information. So I had the capacity to really dive into the really difficult recesses of going into neurology and functional medicine and all that. So my mind was able to take all of the hundreds and thousands of bits of data and coalesce them into a logical picture and create frameworks. And so I've been able to create multiple frameworks, whether it's understanding the 5 layers to identify your optimal diet, an entire model on treating addiction. I forgot to mention I became a sugar addict and a video game addict to cope with everything that was happening growing up. I overcome those 2 addictions, and then creating other frameworks around understanding lifestyle, around teaching and educating on genetics, and so on and so forth. So it's like creating frameworks, absorbing data. But what was a challenge was actually once I got into practice and then and outside the buffered halls of academia, having to market your business was a completely different skill set that there wasn't a test you passed. It involved social intelligence, emotional intelligence, and being able to do a public speaking and just it involved a totally different side of my brain that was not really academic in nature. So it was a very, very difficult transition to leave academia to go into a profession that required um, a lot more social skill than I had. And so people came to me especially when I had physical practice for those first 8 years. They came to me because they knew that I was the one who took on really, really difficult cases, uh, like chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia and autoimmunity and gut issues and hormone imbalances, like all in the same person. And there was a level of grace extended to me for my lack of social acumen because I was able to deeply understand all of the intricacies of their issues. and analyze labs and figure out all these other things that were going on. So uh, it it influenced it. It gave me a tremendous advantage in terms of handling really difficult subjects, but and collect and understanding all the data. But it came, it came with some kryptonite, some social kryptonite. I mean, I describe the best way I can describe to someone like what is it like being on the spectrum. It's like I'm born with a couple superpowers and a buffet of kryptonites.
Mm.
That's the best way I can describe it. So in a clinical setting, as long as your superpowers are really superpowered, then they can forgive a lot of these social kryptonites. But it has made it more difficult to um, create a sustained practice. And I'm much better now than I was when I first started. But it's also a sore point. Like I was 6 years old. I knew I wanted to be a doctor. Like I just wanted to help people and to stop suffering. And then like you get into practice and it's like there's all these extra skills to like I wanting to help people and having knowledge of how to help people is not enough for people to want you to let them help them, if that makes sense. And that was a very painful lesson and really touched on uh, the social isolation and the pain I experienced growing up. And it's like, wait, even if the best of intentions, I still struggling to like devote my life to helping people. It was still a struggle, and that was very painful.
Now, do you think it gives you a different lens when listening to patients?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of you know, I I kind of specialize in really chronically unwell people that were both kicked to the curb by that were kicked to the curb both by Western medicine and a lot of natural medicine. I think at one point in my career, I counted like I was on average the 11th or so clinician the person sought out. And I think what was in common was for people who were chronically unwell, what is in common between them and people on the spectrum is not that we're, unwell. It's just that we can a lot of our surrounding communities, support systems, family and friends can get a lot of fatigue
Mm.
in dealing with the concerns that we carry chronically. Whether people are chronically unwell, like they usually lose most of their friendships, their resources, and their community because it's either they can't engage or they're so difficult to be around because there's so much sensory overwhelm. Whether someone who's got multiple chemical sensitivities, like they have the same issue with smell that I do with sound. Like there can be one smell that sends them into a massive headache and tailspin, and they just have to leave and can't go to places. Or people who are mold sensitive, and mold is this thing where the people who are sensitive to mold, like, they are sensitive to mold, and other people are like, "What's fine? What's the issue? I'm fine. Why are you complaining?" And for me, it's sound. So it's like there's this level of compassion, understanding that like there's this invisible kryptonite that's constantly weakening you, and the other people can't see it. And then some of these people just, or a lot of these people just either drift away or just explicitly leave because they just don't understand and don't want to deal with it and don't have the patience or the understanding or the capacity. And it's one reason I made the comedy show
Mm.
was to give at least cure the ignorance side of it. That I can do something about. Yeah.
N- Now, were there moments where your Aspie brain was actually a superpower?
Uh, it's in the data analysis and figuring out what's going on, and the framework construction. So I created a model called a neuroharmony model, which is an updated mind body model where you've got all the lifestyle issues of the body, all the different ways people approach their mind, but then linking them, which has been missing, is biochemistry. So you actually do lab analysis to link, like the actual link between body and mind is chemistry. And from a philosophical standpoint, it's like when you look at a molecule, is it physical or is it non-physical? And I mean, my favorite class in college was organic chemistry, supposedly the scariest subject in all of the study of medicine, and I loved it. It was just a giant three-dimensional puzzle. And when you look at a molecule, you've got an atom and another atom interacting by electromagnetic forces. So, like, is it physical or is it non-physical? Because the electromagnetic part's kind of non-physical, and the atoms are kind of the really small bits that maintain the molecules. So, I think I view biochemistry as the actual bridge between the physical body and the mind. But now we can actually do testing to understand and track and optimize those intermediates. Then for frameworks, uh, being able to look at someone's lifestyle and see that there's 10 major facets of someone's lifestyle, and I found that people who are chronically unwell had a minimum of 7 out of 10 of those pillars that were crumbling. And then looking at genetics, and just like when I got into genetics, I was like, it just so clicked with how I thought, to be able to understand all the different moving pieces and how they all interact, and then being able to articulate it and make it practical. It's not it, I mean, it's why I became the instructor for internationally for the companies, because my brain worked in such a way where I could just like see it. It's almost like seeing the matrix code. Uh, and that would be a superpower.
All right. Now, functional medicine can sound imitating to people. If you had to explain it to an autistic adult who's already overwhelmed, how would you describe it?
It's the best of Western medicine's lab diagnostics with the best of natural medicine's nutrition, diet, and lifestyle interventions.
Now, what makes it different from just tough it out approach many of us grew up with?
Um, well, you can see the consequences of that at some point. Uh, there's toughing it in enduring can work up to a point, and everyone's point is different. And uh, I mean this just to cite one statistic from I was on a cardiology podcast recently, and the cardiologist who was interviewing me, uh, you know, shared with the audience is the 50% of the time, the first sign of heart disease is death. That there's cardiac arrest and they're dead, and with no symptoms, no nothing. It's just that's the first, and that didn't just happen. Like the heart attacks didn't jump out of the bushes and attack them. That was building up over years and decades, and so the risk of enduring means that a chronic process can suddenly manifest as a precipitous event, and if you don't actually look under the hood, then you can miss that. The other is that you don't really have to suffer so much anymore. That you can actually get the labs like genetics or other things to see, like, why am I suffering unnecessarily? I'll give you an example in my own life. I was doing lots of caffeine to stay awake when growing up because I had such bad insomnia. But if I had known, but I was also like depressed and anxious during the day. But if I had known that genetically I have, I'm genetically vulnerable to caffeine-induced anxiety and depression, then I could have found other alternatives to caffeine. If I had known that I was genetically vulnerable
Hmm.
to histamine, to foods that contain histamine, then I wouldn't have suffered with so many kind of seemingly random headaches and fatigue and like indigestion. If I had known genetically that I was just carb intolerant to like I had the carb tolerance of someone who's a low carb paleo to borderline keto. I had such low carb tolerance. If I had known that, I wouldn't have suffered so many energy, mood, and digestive fluctuations throughout the day. And that's a level of enduring and suffering that's unnecessary. It's just unnecessary. We've got enough we're dealing with. The sensory overwhelm by itself is enough that we have to navigate. And the social ecosystems we've got to, I mean, it feels like the Serengeti out there sometimes,
Hmm.
and it's just we're just trying to avoid these apex predators, like just taking advantage of our good nature and our social and our difficulty reading social cues. Like that's enough to deal with. I would rather have as much practical inform data as possible to make myself as resilient as possible, so that I can have more spoons to handle the rest of the world.
Now, why does testing matter instead of guessing?
Um, Long term, testing will save people time and money and energy. Short term, guessing feels very rewarding,
Mhm.
because if you get something that feels right, it can give the kind of the dopamine rush of like, aha, I outsmarted this thing. And a lot of people on the spectrum really hyper identify with the mind. So it can become this self-esteem trap to try to always figure it out oneself, because we've had to scrappily figure everything else out anyway, so we might as well figure this thing out ourselves. And that was certainly something that I've done, so I have a lot of sympathy for that. But guessing can lead you down the wrong direction, and ultimately you're not actually getting the best, most actionable information as quickly as possible. Because if you do test, like you test your genes, then suddenly you know information you didn't know, and then you also confirm things that you were guessing. So and you stop wasting money, because you're not wasting money on bad diets, bad supplements, bad routines, bad products that just are not a match for you individually. Like there's a thing called bell curve biochemistry, where look, everyone, this Mediterranean diet should be what people should do because that's what all the science says on it. Well, that's bell curve biochemistry. On average, on the bell curve, sure, but we're not one bell curve. By definition, the bell curve has standard deviations that go out to the sides of those bell curves. So where are you on the bell curve is where functional testing comes in. And you may find yourself, like I did, on one side of that bell curve that means something completely different than the middle of that bell curve.
Now, you talk about resilience and capacity. What do those words mean for autistic adults specifically?
So resilience is the ability to bounce back. Capacity is how much you're able to handle before you're at a point where you need to recover or separate oneself, or there's kind of a glitch that in one's either emotional state or physical state, and you're not able to be in that same situation anymore. So if I have a certain capacity for sound, and when I hit that capacity, I have to leave or put an earplug or shift something. Resilience is how quickly I can come back to my full state where I was before I hit that threshold.
Okay. Now, how is burnout different for autistic people?
Um, that's an interesting question. Well, in my experience of it's tricky. So burnout, when I've been burned out and yet I still had to perform, there's a like I had to show up like in graduate school or whatever it was, and just being exhausted, still showing up. What burnout can look, there's burnout where we still have to show up, and there's burnout when we don't have to show up or we
Mhm.
choose not to. So burnout when I don't have to show up, burnout feels like I am exhausted and I don't want to do anything that requires me to be on someone else's agenda or needs, because I'm feeling like I have just been at the beck and call of everyone else's agenda, and I want to just do my own thing in my own routine and not be bothered. and not be critiqued and not be judged. And it can look a lot like a lot of pretty extreme isolation
Yeah.
because it's just I just don't want to deal with anything, and I don't want to be stimulated, and I don't want to be overstimulated. For me, I would drown in video games, and um, and just because I feel like that's one area where I had agency and competency that I could just reliably go back to, and that there was fun. I felt like I was accomplishing something, even though after the game is over, I kind of was flung back into the existential abyss of like exhausted and lonely. Um, but burnout when showing up, having to show up and deal with the situation or deal with what's required of you, whether it's schooling or professional or family or whatever it might be. For me, like I go from I just go monotone and hyper literal. Like I don't my ability to interpret and filter what's in the situation is just like goes down markedly. Like I can't like I get hyper. One of my friends in school said, the more tired you become, the more literal you become. And I miss social cues even more. And when someone asks me a question, I actually sound like a robot just feeding out information because it's just the energy to mobilize my social my social skills is just not there. It's just
Yeah.
not there. Yeah. So it's burnout. What happens when I'm burnt out and I have to be in a social situation or in public or whatever it is, it's it's very draining. Like it's just this, and it becomes very robotic. My voice becomes robotic, my movements become robotic, and I'm just trying to get through, say what needs to be said, like check the boxes and then leave as soon as possible.
Now, what are signs someone's system is overloaded before they hit the wall?
Uh, if if finding one's mind drifting to any vices, like, oh, I really wish I could do this, take that, play this, whatever it might be, that if there's it should be a flag that if the mind is drifting towards any particular vice, that's a sign of incoming overwhelm. I'm not saying that the vice is the answer. I'm saying it's a sign that there's overwhelm. Uh, uh, Increased sensitivity to one's existing sensitivities. Like for me, sounds are already super loud, but they're like extra loud. Another is having a short, like just being real curt, like just short, even less social grace than normal. And being being super blunt,
Hmm.
like
Straight to
super
the
blunt,
point.
like to the point where it can be interpreted as almost cruel.
Oh,
Like just the like I will just say the truth as I see it, whether you like it or in a position to hear it or receive it or not, because I am speaking truth because I see all the things as they are. Unlike you, like it's a very there can be a coldness in the delivery,
yeah. I
and
mean, a lot of people get that from us is because of the fact that we're so blunt and so forward because we're
Mhm.
so literal. It's like, why talk when why speak up in the first place? And what people don't realize with us is we have no gray. There is no gray area for us.
Mhm.
Our minds think if you're telling a story and you misinterpret that story and we know the actual story, our minds think, oh, we need to correct him. It doesn't
Mhm.
think, oh, we need to wait till he's done, pull him aside, tell him you made a mistake in that story. Maybe you should rehash it to everybody. No, we don't think that way. We
Yeah.
only think in black and white. In other
Mhm.
words, we are so straightforward that sometimes it can become, like you said, it can come off as rude.
Yeah. And just and sometimes even just relentless,
Oh,
like pointing out like where it does become a deposition, where it just becomes a takedown of, well, this was incongruent, this was out of integrity, this was wrong, this was flawed, this wasn't specific enough, and you got your dates and times wrong, and you didn't carry the two, and blah, like it's just all these things, and they're all, true in the technical sense, but truth is not merely facts. That there are social truths as well, that people do not operate by black and white data alone, that human beings, particularly more of the more normative types, they're what is truth is kind of weaved in with kind of this social and cultural context, and merely machine gunning out facts is not a way people want to bond.
yeah.
uh,
I mean, I've been told many times because of my bluntness or my literacy that I need to hold back from what I say because people
mhm.
don't get me, people don't understand me. My parents had to go on damage control a lot of
Yeah,
times.
damage control, yeah, totally. Yeah, I have a
And
section in the comedy show on hyperliteralism. Like that's addressed head on.
I mean, one of the things people don't get about the fact that we're about being autistic is you have to be 100% literal when talking to us.
Hmm. Yep.
And to give a good example is if someone told me that I need to clean the front of my house, my mind tells me the front of the house is just the front of the house, the little garden way or whatever in front of my house, not the walkway on the side of my house, and not the weeds coming in from my neighbor's side, just the front. So if you want me to do that, you need to say, can you please do the front and the walkway? And then the weeds that are coming from the neighbors.
Totally.
And then I'll be like, yeah, okay.
Absolutely. And that's why when I was growing up, people would, in school, they do this thing, I'll be your best friend if like let me copy your homework, cheat off your test, whatever it was. And I just remember, I was very, and I was like, okay, I guess this is how friendship works. I don't like, seems very transactional. And then I would let the person do that, and then literally was kicked in the face by them the very next day.
Hmm.
And it's an extremely painful memory of like trying to understand that people don't see the world the way that I do,
No, we
but I
see
didn't
it
have
very,
words. Say it again.
we see it very literal. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
take every little word they tell us as being literal. And a lot of the times we are the butt of the joke because we walk into a joke
Totally.
and we don't get it. We don't get sarcasm. We don't get humor.
I have a whole section on sarcasm. A whole section. Now, the thing I will push back on how we don't get humor, because as someone on the spectrum and also a comic, humor is pattern recognition.
Mm,
And so if you learn the pattern of humor, look, Seinfeld is a self-confessed autistic. And he's one of the greatest stand-up comics that's ever lived. I mean, he's been doing comedy for 50 years. And his I saw him live like 2 years ago, and like he kind of popularized the dry observational humor, and there it is pattern recognition, and if um it's a different style of humor,
mhm,
like it's not like knock knock jokes or something like that. It's just different. My the other thing, to go back to pattern recognition, one section of the in the show, I described the difference between narcissists, sociopaths, and psychopaths,
mm,
because I describe in the show how people on the spectrum are vulnerable to these aversive personalities, like
mhm,
I mentioned, the people in the school. And once I learned the pattern of how to spot a narcissist, a sociopath, and a psychopath, then I was less vulnerable to their predations. And so I put that in the show because I would have done anything to have someone educate me on how to identify these ilk so that I wouldn't be so vulnerable to their predations, whether it was in school or outside school. So to me, the a lot of social another way to describe it is that normies are born with social software.
Mm-hmm.
We're not. So we have to build it from first principles. And it can be built from first principles. There are truisms in human behavior that you can just layer and stack together like an ornate Lego set. And what I have noticed is that people who are on the spectrum who really do study human behavior, like it's a data set, there's like an inflection somewhere around 30s to 40s or so. If they've really studied this, there can be a capacity where you can just mask right in because you understand all the social software. But then as you get older, you're still continuing to learn all of these social cues and the science of socialization and human behavior. You become the most adept at understanding human behavior because it wasn't something you were just born with. It's something you've scientifically constructed over time, vetted with real life experience and confirmed through life experience. And it's something you can academically keep studying and confirming in real life. So what's happened now in my life, strangely enough, is that in my circle of friends, I'm the one they come to for mediation and for clarification about what's happening in different social dynamics and relational dynamics. Like I'm dead serious about that. I'm the one they come to because they know they can describe a scenario to me, and I don't get emotionally wrapped up in their narrative. I'm just seeing the pattern and the data for what it is, and it's like, oh, I think I know what's going on. Would you like to hear it? And then sometimes there's a pause and a bit of like abrasive, like, oh, okay. It's like, well, you asked, so if you don't want me to tell you, I won't tell you. Like, he goes, no, tell me. It's like, okay, here it is. And um and and I've developed a reputation of being the person who can spot what's actually going on simply because I've made it a point of studying human behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And it's it's such a flip of the script from being the butt of the social jokes to now normies coming to me to ask me to help explain what's going on. And I wanted to share that to give people here listening that you can actually, it's like any special interest. You can take a special interest in human behavior and study that and go deep into that, and it's a thing you can actually just get better and better at, even though it what other people were born with, we have to arrive at algorithmically, but you can still add on to your algorithm.
Now, you literally, talking about normies,
Mm-hmm.
you literally help people navigate a normie world. What parts of the world are the hardest on autistic adults from biological or nervous system standpoints?
So, one of the things I do is I help people on the spectrum navigate the normie world, and the way to navigate it that I've found, aside from studying human behavior, and when I'll go back to sitcoms. I didn't know this at the time when I was watching sitcoms. I was actually an anthropologist trying to understand it because when you look at a sitcom literally stands for a situational comedy.
Yeah.
It's the conjunction of those words. So a sitcom is what you have a cast of, we'll call it in round numbers, a half dozen to a dozen people that are the same character from show to show, but they're all thrown into different circumstances from show to show. And you see how the different characters interact. So what happened is that I developed I developed a cast of about several dozen low resolution character archetypes. Oh, this person's behaving like Lisa Simpson. This person is behaving like uh, Urkel. This person is behaving like the bully. This person's behaving like this. It's very much like a Greek pantheon. You've got these different gods and goddesses that all embody certain aspects of human nature. A sitcom is a version of that, less deified, but it's a similar version of it. And uh, the way that I help is one, just pointing out the dynamic that socialization is a skill you can learn, and then to help people navigate by increasing their resilience and their capacity through the data of functional testing. That a lot of times the difficulties around navigation, the normie world, is you're just exhausted and overwhelmed and feel unwell. And we're already having to deal with the sensory overwhelm. And on top of that, our body is also like struggling with whatever various things it's struggling with. It'd be nice to optimize the body's pathways as much as we can so that we have more resilience to navigate the rest of the normie world with everything else that comes with it, like the sensory overwhelm and the social and trying to navigate the social situations.
No,
The other
go on.
the other thing that I help them navigate is pointing out um uh the comedy show also helps making navigation easier if people send it and share it with their family members and loved ones and colleagues as and like there's the full hour show, but there's also like 12-minute highlights.
So kind of like a tool almost.
Well, it's designed as a the show was designed as a Trojan horse to help normies better understand us and for us to better articulate what we're going through.
That's
So
such a cliche of a word, but I love it.
my father was a classicist, so I came to that phrase honestly.
I mean, it makes perfect sense. I mean, what better way to educate the neurotypicals
Mm-hmm.
on how we operate, and what better way to help those of us who are autistic understand how the world operates
Mm-hmm.
by throwing something in that's humor, but not letting them know what it's all about, but have it talk about everything in general. And you're sort of basically educating both sides
Totally,
to the point
100%.
where they both agree.
Yeah, and I point out, I mean, the show covers everything from dating to the subject of love to navigating violence at school to video game addiction to narcissism, sociopathy, psychopathy, the special interests, our inability to make small talk, which is
That's a big one, yeah.
yeah, it's an inability to make small talk. There's a whole section on that. Sound sensitivity. It was 3 minutes. Was just devoted to that. Hyperliteralism, the difficulty recognizing facial expressions,
Oh, yeah.
the masking. I have a whole section on masking, and then the history of some of the terminology, like as probably many of your listeners know, like the term Asperger's is a fraught term in many circles. And I go into the history of Dr. Asperger's, and strangely enough, to some people, it's like I actually try to rescue the term because
Oh,
yeah,
I have,
because say again.
I have fought people on that term because the younger generation
Mm-hmm.
is still in belief that he is a Nazi.
Yeah.
But my best friend, who's one of the biggest neurodivergent YouTubers, podcasters there is, did a whole history of him, and it turns out he's
Mm-hmm.
not a Nazi or a Nazi supporter. He pretended to be just so his family can survive.
I go a step I go a step further. I say that it's actually irrelevant if he was complicit or not with the Nazis, because ultimately it was Asperger's syndrome that brought the Nazis down.
Yeah.
And I could prove it with 3 names: Oppenheimer, Einstein, and Turing.
3 big names.
Three very big names. So to me, it's
Oppenheimer, yeah, came up with the bomb.
uh-huh.
Turing was the first computer.
Mm-hmm.
And who was the other one?
Einstein, yeah,
Einstein. Albert
yeah,
Einstein
yeah,
was autistic.
that guy.
I mean, Albert Einstein was autistic, for God's sake.
So I make the point. It's like I'm quite proud to call myself an Aspie because
Yeah.
I'm in good company. And if it turns out Dr. Asperger was complicit and he's Dr. Frankenstein and we're his monsters, proud to be that.
Yeah.
Like, because we are the ones who ended the war. I mean, I don't know if you saw The Imitation Game, which is a movie starring Benedict Cumberbatch as Turing. Great movie, by the way. Amazing movie. It's estimated that Turing came up with Turing came up basically with uh, so much of the mathematics around computers, and also he's credited for cutting the war short by at least 2 years. Him personally is like World War II was 4 years, not six, because of him. And I don't really care in this. I mean, I care in one sense, but another, I don't care if Dr. Asperger was complicit because we won the war, despite whatever side he was on, and we should be proud of that. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
and
we
there's
should.
other books out there that describe how people on the spectrum are the ones primarily responsible for the advances in all technology.
I mean,
That
I
we have the
mean, we're
brains to
talking.
see the patterns.
I mean, you think about it. I mean, every programmer, I guarantee you, every programmer out there is probably autistic.
There's a joke in Silicon Valley about this. In fact, my understanding is that there's a hiring ratio in the engineering department. This may be apocryphal, I don't know, but the lore is, and I have friends who've worked at Google. The lore is that in the engineering department, for every 20 engineers, they have to hire what they call a nanny. And a nanny is a person who much rarer than a high school engineer. That person understands engineering and knows how to talk and is a translator between the autistic minds of the engineers and the rest of the company, and also between each other. So there's a 20-to-1. That's the lore. I mean, anyone here on Google can correct me, and this may have been different in the early 2000s versus the tens versus now, but it was a phenomenon that it was talked about.
Now, let's talk comedy for a minute. When
Uh-huh.
did you realize humor could be the bridge instead of a barrier?
Tragically, when I was a child, because if I made people laugh, they were less likely to bully me. Um, and then I also learned that humor was a way to demonstrate that I wasn't as socially inept as people thought. Because if I could humorously articulate a phenomenon that was unnamed but everyone felt, then suddenly people respected me a lot more, and that it's like, oh, he's really paying attention, and he really actually does understand what's going on. Um, and that humor was also a way. I also found that then I actually lectured last year at the American Academy of Therapeutic Humor. I was a keynote. That's an organization that's been around for about 30 years. Patch Adams actually spoke there in the past, and it's an organization devoted to laughter therapy. And I that humor is also has a therapeutic benefit, that it drops stress hormones and increases bonding between individuals and also the group as a whole.
Mhm.
So humor is a way to actually, I saw, before I saw any research, I just observed that humor was a way to, um, it was a way to test the social temperature. Like, if I could say something and people would laugh, and I detected it was a sincere laugh, then I knew that I was in a place of acceptance on some level. Like, it's like almost like an invitation to continue, because people want to be around people that make them laugh.
All right. Now, does humor help prevent burnout for you?
Um, it does. I'd say, how do I say it? Look, I encourage anyone here listening to this to actually take a stand-up comedy writing class that has a 5 minute performance in front of a crowd at the end of it.
Mm,
Because it first once you do the first 5 minutes, then the next 5 minutes is easier and easier and easier. But it's a worthwhile project to take on. Like it's a bucket list item I think people should check off. Like just try to do a tight 5 minutes. Call it in the industry, call it a tight five. 5 minutes, tight humor, and um, there's classes everywhere these days. And the way that it helps me with burnout is that it helps end the perseveration and the endless looping of stressful events and traumatic events. I think the one way I describe uh, there's a superpower and there's a kryptonite dichotomy. So you've got a superpower of having the mind of a steel trap,
mhm.
but the kryptonite is that mind of a steel trap has a tendency to clench onto traumatic memories.
Ooh, sort of like those oh God, who have like memories or
Mimetic
who
memory.
pneumatic memory where they can memorize. Oh God, I forgot her. There was a TV show called Unforgettable where
Yeah,
everything she,
the mimetics in this world are usually on balance miserable.
yeah, where everything she sees, she memorized. It's oh God, Mary Lou Henner is one of
Mhm.
them, and she talked about the way she does it is she uses it as a card system. She's able to go through, but she's like the problem with that is though, like you just said, is any traumatic event, it sticks with you forever,
Yeah.
and you
So
can't shake it.
this is the kryptonite, you know, superpower issue. So if mind of a steel trap, because humans are born with a negativity bias, and that's just hardwired in there. You combine that with a pretty strong memory.
Hmm.
There's a big tendency to loop on traumatic events.
Oh
So the
yeah.
way that comedy helps with burnout is that comedy is a wonderful tool to reframe traumas and stress in a way that's palatable and uh, helpful. But the reality is that the most traumatic part of most traumas was not necessarily the trauma itself. It's the any gaslighting and isolation and separation that came from it. And there's two main types of trauma. There's one trauma where I cut off a part of my authenticity to stay with the group. The
Hmm.
other is I cut off myself from the group in order to stay authentic. And
So
then a
you're
capital
almost
T
like two
trauma is
sides.
when,
You're
say
almost
again?
like two sides to a coin.
Yeah. And there are capital T traumas when you do both at the same time.
Oh God.
And so what happens with stand up, and I say this explicitly at the end of the show, is that stand up comedy was a way for me to create shared reality and build community at the same time. Because the most terrible parts about what happened when I was growing up, with all the violence and the gaslighting from my parents, gaslighting at home and violence at school, and no adult actually protecting me. The most traumatic part was the absolute isolation and no one believing me or protecting me, and not having a community and not having a shared reality, not having no shared reality and no community. So that was the most traumatic part. Like physical pain is one thing, but the separation from community and a shared reality is another thing entirely. So comedy is a way that I have helped stop this endless looping
Hmm.
by creating shared reality and community in real time through the comedy. Like whether I'm on stage or talking to you or people watch the show, it's creating, and that's I created a show that was available for free in order for people who don't have shared reality, literally, normie the like people watch it together and suddenly they're shared reality.
Now, for artistic adults listening who feel broken, exhausted, or too much,
Hmm.
what do you wish they understood about their bodies and their brain?
One of the ways out of overwhelm and burnout is just getting more data that is practical and gives a pathway forward. Because like it's when you're going through hell, keep going. Like you go through it. Like the way out is to go through, in some sense. And if you're stuck and feeling overwhelmed or paralyzed by things, like there, just find a better map. Find a better map, and one of those ways is to get genetics testing. That's the way that I have found is the most high value test, single high value test for people to help get them their resilience and capacity increased. Uh, the other thing I would look at is, I mean, if people, here's the thing, sometimes people, when they see the data, they act on the data. And some people also know that they need to do some things and they're just not. Like I'm working with a gentleman right now where he is like the lead dominoes, like he stays up late almost every night playing video games, and and that it's affecting his sleep, it's affecting his diet, it's affecting his exercise, it's affecting his social time and social life. And like there's a sabotage behavior that's going on that we have brought in um additional professionals to
Mhm.
help him break this cycle.
Right.
He knows the information, like he's done labs. He knows what he needs to do, but he's got this lead domino of sabotage sleep that is just screwing up everything. And if I were to tell people, what are the top three things you can focus on in general to help break the cycle? One is get more data, like a genetics test. Two is absolutely focus on sleep and protect that. Because if people are sleep deprived and they have weird cycles and they're off their rhythm, absolutely everything collapses. Your social skills, your dietary choices, lack of exercise, and then it becomes this awful feedback loop where you're so tired, and then sometimes people have this burst of energy in the evening, and finally they're alone and they're not answering to anyone else, and like I just want to quote relax and do something I want to do, and I lived this for 25 years. I was doing that with my video game addiction, so I'm speaking from full awareness and compassion. I don't put down the guy at all because I absolutely 100% have lived what he's doing. And but the consequences are still there. That doing protecting your sleep is one of the single most important things you can do if you're feeling burnt out or overwhelmed or easily upset. And then the second thing that I would say is, uh, you know, eat a solid breakfast. Like actually, don't skip breakfast. Eat a solid breakfast, particularly one preferably one that's higher in protein. Move. I know exercise can be a trigger word for some people. So like think of movement over exercise if exercise is confronting for some people. And I also one of the things that I really recommend people do is to a find a thing that find a special interest that involves other people
Oh yeah.
and just start to, because if you're not feeling socially comfortable, at least you can just climb the skill tree around the other people and just be around, even if you're just in the class. Like jujitsu is a great example where there's massive skill trees to climb. You don't have to talk a lot if you don't want to. You're just rolling. You're just skill, and and then you're actually engaging in a community that you can, even if you're feeling socially awkward, you can still demonstrate value in the community by climbing the skill tree.
Now, looking back, what's something you once tried to fix about yourself that you now see as a strength?
The
Take your time.
the ability to tell the truth, like
Mhm.
to identify what's going on, whereas before, uh, it was it was done very unskillfully,
Mhm.
and at times out of just sheer spite. Like the one thing I had was my brain and my voice, and I could just weaponize that on a dime because nothing else was going right in my life, and I could fight back and with that. Uh, but now, just like my friends coming to me and asking me to be the mediator, that's it's the way that I used my dedication to the truth has shifted. My relationship to truth has changed.
All right. Now, if someone finishes this episode and remembers just one thing you said, what do you hope it is?
Functional medicine is the best of Western medicine diagnostics and the best of natural medicine's lifestyle and diet lifestyle interventions. We now have genetics testing to give you a personalized, truly personalized roadmap to increase your capacity and resilience and your longevity and well-being. It's if people want to feel better and have more self-agency in this world, then the mind alone is not enough. Learn your personal roadmap to your body and your physiology, and then your quality of life will be much, much better, whatever you choose to do.
And before we wrap up, where can people watch Neurospicy and what do you hope they feel when they do?
What I hope they feel when they do watch it.
Yeah.
Well, they can just go to YouTube and put in Neurospicy Dr. Sam Shay into YouTube, and it'll just pop up. Um, there's a link in the show notes to just click on it, but literally just putting Dr. Sam Shay Neurospicy, you'll find it. What I'm hoping they feel is that if people hear this, that they're on the spectrum and they're watching it, what I hope they feel is that they are not alone, and that not only they're not alone, but they're seen, they're understood, and that it's it's like we are a valuable member of society, and just not all of society has fully seen recognizes that yet, and that there is shared reality and community.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That was Dr. Sam Shay. I'm Reid Miles, and just like he said, you're never alone. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you, Dr. Shay.
Thank you.